What if everything we know about human civilization's beginning is completely wrong? According to 4,000-year-old Mesopotamian records, our first teachers weren't human. They emerged from the ocean, half man, half fish, and they taught humanity literally everything. These weren't myths. The Assyrians carved their images into palace walls. They had names. They built our first cities, and identical fishmen appear in Dogon, Aboriginal, and Hindu traditions. Who or what were the Apkallu? And why does every ancient culture remember the same impossible teachers? A notable aspect of Mesopotamian art, particularly the ones created during the Neo-Assyrian era in the first half of the first millennium BCE, depicts certain bizarre fish and birdman hybrids that are seen engaging in religious ceremonies. Large-scale relief carvings of these supernatural entities were used to embellish the palace's wall of the Assyrian rulers. These strange beings have also left behind a ton of clay figures and cylinder seal impressions that have been found. Who were they, though, and why did the royal architecture give them such a prominent place? The hybrid fishmen who had come to Babylon in pre-Diluvian periods and served as the advisors to the 10 kings who ruled before the flood were referred to in the cuneiform inscriptions as Apkallu, which means sage or wise. The Seven Sages was another name for the seven Apkallu. One by one, they had risen from the Erythraean Sea, Indian Ocean, and disseminated to the populace all the laws of civilization. The Chaldean astrologer Berossus, a priest at the Temple of Bel and a contemporary of Alexander, wrote about the Apkallu in a piece of literature called Babyloniaca, c. 281 BCE. According to him, the first of the Apkallu to arrive in prehistoric times was known as Oannes, Akkadian, or Oannes, Greek. At that time, a huge crowd lived in Babylon and they didn't have any rules. Alulim, the very first king on the Sumerian king list, began his reign in the first year. There made its appearance, from a part of the Erythraean Sea which bordered upon Babylonia, an animal endowed with reason, who was called Oannes. The whole body of the animal was like that of a fish, and had under a fish's head another head, and also feet below, similar to those of a man, subjoined to the fish's tail. His voice, too, and language was articulate and human, and a representation of him is preserved even to this day. This being in the daytime used to converse with men, but took no food at that season, and he gave them an insight into letters and sciences and every kind of art. He taught them to construct houses, to found temples, to compile laws, and explain to them the principles of geometrical knowledge. He made them distinguish the seeds of the earth, and showed them how to collect fruits. In short, he instructed them in everything which could tend to soften manners and humanize mankind. From that time, so universal were his instructions, nothing material has been added by way of improvement. When the sun set, it was the custom of this being to plunge again into the sea and abide all night in the deep, for he was amphibious. After this there appeared other animals like Oannes, of which Berossus promises to give an account when he comes to the history of the kings. It is plainly evident from reading this incredible account by Berossus that Apkallu were more than just priests wearing cloaks made of fish skin. They were aquatic beings who possessed traits shared by both humans and fish. They were referred to as creatures of the Apsu in the cuneiform literature, where Apsu denoted the sea of freshwater beneath the earth or the underground aquifers. They were seen coming from the Erythraean Sea, suggesting that there are tubes and passages connecting the aquifers with seas, rivers, and oceans. The god Ea, Enki, the king of the Apsu and the guardian of humanity, sent the Apkallu. The god Ea was associated with knowledge, culture, water, fertility, arts, and magic. The following verses concerning the Apkallu are taken from the Old Babylonian epic of Era. Where are the 7 Apkallu of the Apsu, the pure Paradu fishes, who are perfect in lofty wisdom like Ea's, their lord? Who can make my body holy? Poem of Era, Tablet 2, line 162. The Apkallu were frequently referred to as Paradu fishes, i.e. carp, confirming that they were indeed imagined as a peculiar hybrid of humans and fish. The names of the 7 Apkallu are listed within one of the Bit Maseri incantations. They are praised for their power to manage the schemes and plans made for heaven and earth, and are jointly referred to as the pure parade fishes of the sea. Oannes, who accomplishes the plans of heaven and earth, Oannes, who is endowed with comprehensive understanding, and Meduga, for whom a good destiny has been decreed, in Megalama, who was born in a house, in Mebeluga, who grew up in pasture land, Anenlilda, the conjurer of the city of Eridu, Utuabzu, who ascended to heaven, the pure Purata fishes, the Purata fishes of the sea, the 7 of them, the 7 sages, who have originated in the river, who control the plans of heaven and earth. The nickname Anenlilda, the conjurer of the city of Eridu, which refers to the Apkallu, indicates that they were also excellent architects. The establishment of the 7 ancient Sumerian towns of Eridu, Ur, Nippur, Kulab, Kesh, Lagash, and Shurupak is credited to the 7 sages. The 7 sages had also outlined Uruk's strategy in accordance with the Gilgamesh epic. Let's take a moment to think about this. According to legend, the Apkallu were a race of hybrid fishmen who lived in Apsu and arose from the ocean. They transmitted all of civilization's knowledge and skills to the inhabitants of the prehistoric era while possessing incredible intelligence and power. Is this a true account of our distant past, or has it been embellished by a creative imagination? Could it be that, in the middle of the underground aquifers, a subterranean realm inhabited by strange beings exists beneath the surface of the earth? What do we know about the aquifer's ecology? Probably nothing. We have enormous freshwater reservoirs beneath us that go down 30,000 feet. These aquifers hold close to 30% of the planet's entire freshwater supply, with the remaining 40% frozen in glaciers. The underground aquifers mirror the many levels of the underworld that so many prehistoric societies spoke of because they have numerous vertical levels divided by layers of permeable rock. There is a watery, tear-like underworld of mythology, in fact. Freshwater for rivers, lakes, and other water bodies comes from underground aquifers, and a sophisticated network of tunnels connects them all. How can we discount these ancient reports as myths without searching the aquifers and, extra broadly, the subsurface topography of our globe for indications of life? Ancient myths describe a land below the Earth's surface that is always lovely and inhabited by superhuman beings. According to legend, this otherworldly dimension can be reached through caves hidden beneath mountains, rivers, and seas that are carefully concealed and guarded to keep out trespassers. 7 gates guard the underworld, according to Mesopotamian mythology. In the Gilgamesh epic, Gilgamesh enters a tunnel at the base of Mount Mashu's twin peaks to go to the underworld. Before arriving in the gardens of the divine beings, a paradise full of jewel-laden trees, he walks for 12 hours in total darkness. Native American tribes, including the Hopi, Navajo, Iroquois, and Sioux, among others, think that their forebears left a subterranean world and came to the surface via caverns and tunnels. Some of the upright Hopi were transferred to safe places in the underground realm whenever the Hopi supreme creator Sotuknang demolished the planet. In Irish mythology, portals concealed under mounds or tumuli allowed access to the underworld Anwen, which was home to fairies and demons. Greeks created temples and caves because they thought certain caverns had entrances to the underworld. The Mayans believed that caverns and cenotes were entrances to their 9-level underwater underworld. There are 7 underground locales in Indian mythology, collectively known as Patala or Nagaloka. These are the worlds of the heavenly human serpent hybrids known as Nagas, as well as other paranormal creatures including Rakshasas, giants, yakshas, dwarves, and various hybrid creatures that are all offspring of the 7 sages of Vedic lore. The Nagas are reported to reside in lovely subterranean regions with trees, lakes, rivers, and dazzling mansions embellished with priceless gems. Although the sun and moon are not visible there, the jewels adorning the hoods and bodies of the Nagas give out an effulgence that brightens the area. This effulgence may be a reference to bioluminescence. Exploring underground aquifers for evidence of life using various sorts of remotely controlled underwater vehicles may be the need of the hour, ROV. We should have an open mind and allow the ancient people to speak for themselves till that time comes so that we can understand the truth of what they are attempting to communicate to us. Now, in addition to the human-fish hybrid sculptures, the walls of Assyrian palaces are decorated with numerous bird-headed figures, winged human figures, and cylinder seals. What do these beings represent is the question. In the first millennium BCE, the Assyrians practiced apotropaic rituals to prevent the arrival of evil, especially in the form of contagious diseases, into a person's home. The bird-headed beings were also referred to as the Seven Sages and creatures of the Apsu in the incantations, Wigerman writes in Mesopotamian protective spirits, the ritual texts. The family members were required to create a group of clay figurines of the seven fish Apkallu, the seven-bird Apkallu, as well as other gods and monsters. These sets of figurines were buried under the floor of the house in various locations after the rituals, which included ritualistic cleansing and incantations, were finished in order to drive out evil and stop it from entering the dwelling. Consequently, the Apkallu were portrayed as both human fish and human bird hybrids. Since no justifications are given in the texts, it is unclear why those representations were used. Maybe the Apkallu were shapeshifters and, when necessary, could take on the form of a human-bird hybrid. Vasistha and Vishwamitra, two members of the Seven Sages, are said to have engaged in a protracted battle after changing into birds, according to an Indian tale. This could be a possible explanation for the bird-headed Apkallu, because the idea of shapeshifting was extremely widespread in the body of ancient legends. The human figures with wings are simpler to describe. According to the Epic of Era, the storm deity Marduk had exiled the Apkallu to the Apsu following the flood. Oannes, human sages, were afterward tasked with purifying Marduk's sanctuary. Oannes, who succeeded the Apkallu after the flood, is represented by the winged human beings. Given that the Oannes have wings and a horned crown, which was a symbol of divinity in ancient Mesopotamia, it is most likely that they were demigods who were created when the gods and humans united. The Apkallu are typically depicted holding a bandudu, or ritual bucket, in their left hand. The Apkallu sprinkle holy water from this bucket with a mululu, a pine cone, which they carry in their right hand. This is a purifying ritual that may have been carried out to promote fertility, drive out demons, treat illnesses, etc. What holy water actually is and how it could have such power may be questions that people have. We are aware that it takes a long time for water to gradually reach the aquifer's lowest levels. As a result, this water not only gets rid of contaminants, but also picks up a lot of minerals as it descends, giving it a lot of potentials. It may be even more powerful because the ritual scriptures state that the Apkallu sprinkling the water did so while speaking sacred incantations. Scientific studies have demonstrated that sound waves can speed up chemical interactions between liquid and air by boosting the concentrations of dissolved gases like oxygen. Research by Japanese scientist and healer Masahiro Emoto has revealed that sound waves and music can change the crystalline structure of ice. Interestingly, the ritual bucket theme is depicted on a monolithic, T-shaped pillar at the ancient excavation of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, in which the earliest stratum of the monument has been dated to c. 9000 BCE, a few decades after the end of the last ice age. One of the T-shaped columns features a row of buckets with their tops carved out in relief that resembles the buckets the Apkallu is holding. The sculpture of a vulture grasping a circular item is located directly behind the buckets. This could be a bird Apkallu using a pine cone to sprinkle holy water on the land to make it fertile. There is a possibility that the people who constructed Göbekli Tepe saw the Apkallu while they went about their cleansing rituals circa 9000 BCE. The learning of the Apkallu appears to have stretched into the antediluvian era, which is precisely what the Sumerian stories tell us, as Göbekli Tepe was constructed a few decades after the end of the Younger Dryas period, during which a global flood may have been caused by comet impacts. In addition to the ritual bucket, the Apkallu may hold a rosary, a bouquet of flowers, or a scepter in their left hand. These artifacts demonstrate the Apkallu's functions as royal priests and sages to the monarchs, Evidently, many religions still practice the forms of worship that the Apkallu established at the very beginning of civilization. For instance, Christians, Buddhists, and Hindus still utilize rosary beads as tools for meditation, while Hindus sprinkle amrita or shanti jal, holy water, on the audience for blessings and purification. Church priests sprinkle holy water during baptism. According to some experts, the mitre, a tall cap with such a front and a rear half sewed at the sides, worn by Catholic priests, may represent the fish head above the Apkallu's head. The Apkallu had conveyed to the Babylonians the entire body of understanding in every area of knowledge they knew, as Berossus had said. Due to the Apkallu's globe travels, while on a mission to spread the laws of civilization, this knowledge and ritual practices have spread throughout the planet. The Dogon tribe of Mali in West Africa claims that the Nomo, amphibious fishmen from the Sirius star system, visited them thousands of years ago and taught them numerous talents. Like the Apkallu, the Nomo possessed a human-like upper torso and a fish-like lower body. They came on a vessel, followed by fire and thunder from the skies. The Nomo needed a watery habitat to survive, so when they first arrived on our planet, they excavated a water reservoir and dove in. The Dogons addressed them as their teachers and masters of water. According to oral legend, the 7 gigantic Meges entities came out of the sea while the Anishinaabe people from North America lived along the Atlantic Ocean coast. The Wabanakieing peoples were taught the meaty way of life by them. 6 of the 7 great Meges creatures persisted and created the Odudaman clans for the eastern peoples. The Wanjinas are mighty spirit creatures that the Aboriginal Australians of the Kimberley region of northwest Australia believe brought their people's laws, culture, and language when they descended from the Milky Way. They made the earth and everything that lives there. The Wanjinas visited a close-to-water hole after imparting all the knowledge necessary to the Aboriginals. The water source connected to the rock paintings is said to contain them at its bottom. As mighty rainmaker spirits, they have control over the clouds and rains and use floods, lightning, and cyclones to punish lawbreakers. It's interesting to note that the phrase Wanjinas incorporates the word genes, which is connected to the terms jinn, or genie, and denotes the mysterious spirits that have the power to influence people. When the winged living thing sages of Assyrian art, the Oannes, were originally found, researchers really referred to them as winged genies. The 7 sages are most frequently mentioned in India, outside of Mesopotamia. The 7 sages were collectively referred to as the Saptarishis in the Vedic tradition, Sapta-7 Rishis-sages. They were referred to as the lords of creation and the mind-born sons of Brahma, Manasputra, and Prajapatis. They are typically listed as Marichi, Atri, Angiras, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, and Vasistha in the scriptures. According to the epic narrative, the Saptarsis served as Ixvaku's tutors and priests, as well as those of his successors during the Golden Age's solar kingdom. Human lineages were founded by the divine Saptarsis, who succeeded in assuming the role of Saptarsis from earlier generations. As a result, the Vedic tradition is similar to that of Mesopotamia, where divinely derived antediluvian Apkallus was succeeded by a human Oannes in the post-diluvian era. According to the Rig Veda, the 7 godlike rishis were skilled in ritual, hymns, and laws. Vasistha is referred to as the knower of both earth and heaven in a Vedic song. The 4 ancient forefathers and the 7 great sages were born from my intellect and got my strength. All of the creatures in this world descended from them. The 7 enlightened sages are referred to in the Mahabharata as the 7 bright-crested ones. By their unified opinion, there came into being what is considered the highest sastra, i.e., sacred scriptures. In addition, they were teachers of the knowledge of moksha, liberation, and the first to know the Veda, who have been created as educators of the Veda. In essence, the 7 sages were responsible for compiling and disseminating the entirety of the Vedic knowledge that the ancient Indians possessed in fields like yoga, medicine, astrology, armament, architecture, music, language, and grammar, among others. However, the Vedic texts make it clear that the seven sages were not of this earth. They were associated by Vedic astronomers with the seven bright stars of the Great Bear asterism, Ursa Major constellation. They were recognized as follows: Alcaid, Atri Megrez, Angiras Alioth, Pulastya Fechta, Pulaha Merak, Kratudube, and Vasistha Mazar, all starred with Marisi as their leading lady. According to legend, the Saptarishis arrive on Earth during the Satya Yuga, Golden Age, and continue to live there for a while until the Treta Yuga, Silver Age, during which time they repromulgate the Vedas and create lineages. The tradition is continued by their human offspring till the conclusion of the Dwapara Yuga, Bronze Age. The Vedic knowledge and Rishi heritage are gradually lost during the Kali Yuga, Iron Age, which is the current era of ignorance and violence. After the Kali Yuga will be over, the seven sages return to Earth to create Dharma and repromulgate the Vedas. These narratives make it clear that our predecessors believed the seven sages, who were portrayed as human fish or human bird hybrids, were extraterrestrial beings who had visited our planet. There is no debate that these were extraterrestrial beings, regardless of whether their precise origin was the Sirius star system, the Great Bear constellations, or some other stellar system in the Milky Way. Simply put, they were aliens, which is why they appeared so strange. They could have come with the intention of making sure that our planetary functions as a successful school for the development of consciousness. Ancient wisdom teachings claim that souls reincarnate on Earth multiple times and gradually rid their minds of egoic ideas, goals, and routines until they become conscious of their divine essence. Because of this, the seven sages not only taught humanity how to live a civilized existence, but also provided a plethora of esoteric knowledge to aid in our ascent. It's possible that the Apkallu created their abode in the freshwater aquifers beneath the earth because that environment suited their foreign physiology. According to recent scientific findings, underground life might be the most prevalent type of life in other worlds, in the known universe, and beyond. Living on the surface can be the exception rather than the rule. Geological proof of a planet-wide groundwater system on Mars was discovered in 2019 by scientists. Pluto and Europa, the fourth biggest of Jupiter's 67 known moons, both have an underlying ocean beneath their thick, icy shells. Because they are protected from harsh temperatures and high-energy radiation, these underground oceans might serve as incubators for life. The example of Europa is particularly intriguing since water from its subterranean ocean occasionally bubbles to the icy surface. Oceanic life on Europa is more likely to exist because of the movement of chemicals and energy between the ocean's surface and its interior. According to Richard Greenberg of the University of Arizona in Tucson, there could potentially be at least 3 million tons of fish-like animals that could survive and thrive on Europa. If alien fish can live in the subterranean oceans of other planets, then why not the fish-man hybrids like the Apkallu? Wouldn't such beings from that other planet or stellar systems like to construct their residence in a setting resembling their home galaxy, planet, or star if they were to come on Earth, which in this instance would be the Earth's underground water reserves? Coming here by comets would be the simplest route from some other planetary or star system. The Apkallu may have discovered how to manipulate comets' trajectories and use them for interstellar travel because they possessed supernatural knowledge and abilities. Oumuamua, the first interstellar space rock, rocketed away from the Sun like a comet in 2017 as it passed the solar system in a hyperbolic orbit. The importance of this discovery was quickly recognized by astrophysicist Chandra Wickramasinghe, who together with Sir Fred Hoyle had put forth the cometary panspermia idea. He co-authored an article with his colleagues in which they said that the theory that comets and cometary bodies are the means of transport for biology throughout the galaxy has been extensively discussed by Hoyle, Wickramasinghe, and their many collaborators for over nearly 4 decades. The discovery of our first visitor on a hyperbolic orbit confirms our inextricable connection with life that may exist in distant planetary systems. Evidently, nothing in the archaeological evidence and the oral traditions of the Seven Sages is improbable when we examine them from a logical standpoint, taking into consideration our current understanding of the universe. It might be in opposition to our preconditioned ways of thinking, which are founded on the things we have observed or heard over the past few millennia. While we are currently living in the dark period of Kali, ancient accounts also tell that these supernatural beings stay away from contact with people. But every now and then, we hear tales of people who have experienced weird encounters with enigmatic beings, which might suggest that the underground creatures the Seven Sages birthed are slowly awakening after millennia of hibernation. We might be living in a time when some of history's most puzzling secrets, which have been consigned to mythology, emerge from hiding and come to light. The subterranean sages, between myth, memory, and the aquatic cosmos. The journey through the world of the Apkallu, the fish and bird men sages of Mesopotamia, begins as an exercise in decoding ancient art and ends as a profound confrontation with the architecture of reality itself. We set out to identify strange hybrid figures on Assyrian reliefs and decipher their cuneiform epithets. We emerge contemplating the possibility that the most foundational myths of civilization are not allegories, but geological and astronomical testimonies. The Apkallu are not merely a curious footnote in the study of ancient religion. They are a keystone in a global subterranean narrative about the origins of knowledge, the nature of teachers, and the hidden, aqueous dimensions of our own planet. The Mesopotamian evidence is startlingly consistent and literal. The Apkallu are not gods, but emissaries. They are pure Puradu fishes, creatures of the Apsu, who rise from the Erythraean Sea, not as metaphors for priestly wisdom cloaked in Piscine costume, but as amphibious beings of actual hybrid physiology. Their mission, as recorded meticulously by Berossus, is one of total cultural transmission. Law, agriculture, architecture, geometry, and social order. They are civilizers in the most concrete sense, bridging a primordial human state of chaotic survival to one of structured society. Their dwelling is the Apsu, not a vague underworld, but the vast, tiered network of freshwater aquifers beneath the Earth's crust, a watery, tear-like underworld that geologically mirrors the mythological descriptions. This is where the Mesopotamian account stops being a local myth and becomes a global cipher. The Apkallu narrative refracts across continents and epochs with uncanny symmetry. In West Africa, the Dogons Namo, fishmen from Sirius, arrive in a vessel of fire and thunder, dig a reservoir, and become masters of water. In Aboriginal Australia, the Wanjinas, cloud and rain-making spirit beings, descend from the Milky Way and retreat into waterholes. In North America, the Anishinabe's 7 great Migyas beings emerge from the Atlantic to establish clans and laws. In Vedic India, the Saptarishis, the mind-born sons of Brahma, are not just sages but celestial entities associated with Ursa Major, periodically descending to re-promulgate sacred knowledge across cosmic cycles, yugas. The pattern is undeniable. A cohort of 7, or sometimes more, non-human, often aquatic or celestial, beings arrive at the dawn of human memory. They are teachers, not conquerors. They impart the foundational tools of civilization and spirituality. And then they withdraw, not to the heavens in a vague sense, but specifically into the earth, into its waters, into a hidden, protected, parallel realm accessible through caves, cenotes, and subterranean passages. This is not the stuff of vague, ancient astronaut speculation. It is the specific, recurring motif of subterranean aquatic pedagogy. The modern mind, conditioned by a surface-centric, materialist paradigm, instinctively seeks to demythologize this. We label it priestly symbolism or shamanistic fantasy, but the ancient sources resist this reduction. They do not say, priests dressed as fish brought knowledge. They say, beings who were fishmen brought knowledge. To dismiss this as primitive imagination is to assume our ancestors were incapable of distinguishing between a man in a costume and a being with gills, scales, and a human voice, a distinction even a child could make. Perhaps we have been the ones guilty of a lack of imagination, constrained by our own limited sensory and scientific horizons. Geology and astrobiology now provide a framework that makes this ancient testimony not just plausible, but compelling. We now know that Earth's subsurface is not a barren lithosphere, but a vast, interconnected planetary aquifer system, holding 30% of the planet's liquid freshwater in labyrinthine, multi-tiered reservoirs. This is the Apsu made manifest. Furthermore, our understanding of life's potential has been revolutionized. We have discovered entire ecosystems thriving in absolute darkness around hydrothermal vents powered by chemosynthesis. The effulgence of the Nagaloka's jewels that lights their underworld finds a parallel in the eerie bioluminescence of deep-sea and cave-dwelling organisms. Most significantly, planetary science has revealed that subsurface oceans are the rule, not the exception, in our solar system and likely the cosmos. Europa, Enceladus, Ganymede, Pluto, and even Mars show evidence of vast global liquid water oceans beneath icy shells or within porous rock. The scientific hypothesis of Richard Greenberg that Europa's ocean could harbor millions of tons of fish-like life is not science fiction. It is a reasoned extrapolation based on energy and chemistry. If complex aquatic life can arise in the lightless, pressurized oceans of a Jovian moon, then the ancient proposition that Earth's own vast, shielded, mineral-rich aquifers could host or have hosted complex, intelligent life becomes a legitimate scientific question, not a fantasy. Thus, the Apkallu narrative presents a tripartite hypothesis of staggering scope. The teachers were real, and they were aquatic. The consistent global lore points not to extraterrestrials arriving in metallic ships, but to an indigenous, terrestrial, or perhaps paraterrestrial intelligence native to Earth's own subsurface hydrosphere. These beings, evolved in the stability, darkness, and mineral bounty of the deep aquifers, possessed a consciousness and technology, or biotech, vastly different from surface-dwelling, solar-dependent humanity. Civilization was a curriculum. Their intervention was pedagogical, seeing the nascent potential and perhaps the perilous ignorance of surface humanity emerging from the last ice age. They initiated a controlled, gradual transfer of knowledge, agriculture to create stability, architecture to create sacred spaces, law to create order, geometry and astronomy to understand cosmic cycles. This was not a gift, but a deliberate tutelage, a seeding of concepts meant to steer human development away from pure predation and toward a sustainable, spiritually aware civilization. The holy water rituals they taught were not superstition, but perhaps applied hydroscience, using mineral-rich aquifer water, structured by sound, incantations, for bioenergetic purification and fertility enhancement, principles hinted at by modern studies in cymatics and structured water. Withdrawal and cyclic return. After the foundational transfer, and perhaps after a cataclysm like the Younger Dryas impacts, arc floods, these beings withdrew to their native realm. The post-Diluvian Oannes, or human sages, were their appointed successors, the keepers of the tradition. The lore of cyclical returns, as in the Vedic Yugas, suggests this may be a long-term observational project. They remain present, monitoring from their inaccessible realm, re-engaging only at critical junctures in the human cycle, or through subtle liminal contacts, the weird encounters of modern times. This framework turns history inside out. Human civilization is not a linear, self-generated ascent from cave to city. It is the surface expression of a deeper, older, and wiser subterranean civilization's pedagogical project. Our greatest monuments, from Göbekli Tepe with its ritual buckets and vultures, circa 9000 BCE, immediately post-Diluvian, to the ziggurats of Mesopotamia and the pyramids of Egypt, are not merely human triumphs. They are graduation exercises, built according to sacred blueprints provided by the tutors from below, designed to harmonize surface life with terrestrial and cosmic energies. The implications are humbling and revolutionary. It means the collective unconscious that Carl Jung described may have a tangible, geological source. The archetypes of the wise old man, the helpful animal, the divine messenger may be racial memories of actual encounters with these beings. Our profound universal myths of a hidden, beautiful underworld, the Greek Elysium, the Celtic Anduin, the Hindu Patala, are not wish fulfillment fantasies, but folk memories of a real coexisting biosphere within our planet. The conclusion, then, is not a definitive claim that fishmen built Sumer. It is a powerful mandate for a radical shift in perspective. We must stop reading mythology as failed science or simple psychology and start reading it as possible xenology, the study of other intelligences. The Apkallu, the Nomo, the Saptarishis are not myths to be explained away. They are testimony to be investigated. The path forward requires a fusion of deepest respect for ancient testimony with boldest application of modern science. We must, geologically, seriously map and explore Earth's deep aquifers not just for water resources, but as potential biomes using the most advanced, silent, non-invasive sensors and ROVs. Astrobiologically, embrace the subsurface ocean paradigm and consider that any future discovery of extraterrestrial life is far more likely to be aquatic and subterranean than little green surface dwellers. Historically, re-examine archaeological sites, especially those near ancient water sources, caves, and springs, with this pedagogical hypothesis in mind. The placement of Göbekli Tepe, the focus on Eridu as the first city where kingship descended from heaven, the global prevalence of serpent and water cults, all gain new coherent meaning. Culturally, listen to indigenous oral traditions not as charming folklore, but as potential data sets containing precise environmental and historical information filtered through a cosmological lens. The Apkallu, in their silent stone-carved processions on Assyrian walls, have been waiting for us to mature enough to understand their message. They represent the possibility that we are not alone, and we never have been. The alien is not out there, beyond the stars. It is in here, below our feet, in the planet's ancient, dark, life-giving waters. They were the first teachers, and their greatest lesson may be this: true wisdom lies not in conquering the surface, but in remembering our connection to the deep, hidden sources of life and knowledge from which we, and perhaps our tutors, ultimately sprang. Our civilization may be a classroom, and the final exam is whether we can recognize our teachers before we destroy the schoolhouse.
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. I love hearing from you. Check out more videos on the screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.